Hello everyone, this is Jack Frost with your weekly update for the Ethereum Technicals and Solana. And today updating the weekly charts on the Ethereum Technical Weekly Chart. Price has declined after its last consolidation range between resistance at 4130 and support, now resistance at 2800. For the very short term, price consolidates within resistance at 2800 and support at 2400. At this time frame, volume supports downwards movement overall with the strongest volume on the bearish candlesticks, though some strength on recent bullish sessions sees some strength for upwards movement for the short term. ADX now declines at this time frame, showing no clear trend. On balance, volume has broken above prior resistance, giving a bullish signal. ATR overall moves sideways with a slight bearish slope as price consolidates for the very short term, previously increasing along with price, giving an overall bullish outlook for volatility. As ADX declines for Ethereum at the weekly time frame, we use the model of stochastics and support and resistance, though at this point we do prefer the daily time frame for short-term price fluctuations. Though at the weekly time frame, the model of stochastics and support and resistance suggests a downward swing may be complete, where price found support around 2400 with upwards movement to now continue towards resistance at 2800 or potentially up to 3580, where price finds one of those resistance points while stochastics enters overbought. On the technical daily chart for Ethereum, we can see more detail for price's consolidation within support at 2400 and resistance up at 2720. For the very short term, price has found resistance at 2720, now declining, finding support at 2400. At this point, volume supports downwards movement overall with the strongest volume on these bearish candlesticks, particularly on these last two short-term lows just here, this last short-term low here where price found support at 2100. This increase in range and a push from volume, as I have mentioned in countless previous videos, at this point could indicate that this low could be sustained at this point, though we do still require confidence in upwards movement to see whether the low may be sustained, and at this point we still do not have that confidence. A push on the last completed candlestick sees price supporting downwards movement at the short-term time frame as well. ATR moves overall sideways with a slight bearish slope for the short term as price consolidates, giving an overall bullish outlook for volatility, while ATR previously increased along with price. And as ADX declines for Ethereum at the daily time frame as well, we continue to use the model of stochastics and support and resistance, which suggests a downward swing may occur at this point towards support at 2100, where price may find that support point while stochastics enters oversold. As I have mentioned in previous videos, we do rely quite heavily on the Elliott Wave count, so if you do want the full picture for Ethereum and our analysis for price's short-term movements as well as mid and long-term movements, you can sign up for that using the link in the description below at pureelliottwave.com. On the Solana weekly chart, this wave count sees upwards movement to overall continue for cycle wave 3, currently within the beginning stages of a primary wave 5. Primary wave 4 labeled complete at this last low just here, with an Elliott channel drawn around the primary degree movements, using Elliott's second technique from the end of primary wave 2 to the end of primary wave 4, with a copy on the end of primary wave 3. As price continues, it hovers around the lower edge of the Elliott channel at this point, though as primary wave 5 and the end of cycle wave 3 is expected to continue upwards, it may find resistance at the upper edge. However, it is also possible that as this is a fifth wave ending a third wave 1 degree higher, it may end with a blow off top, as is common for cryptocurrencies like Solana. So as these waves unfold, that is a possibility to continue to be aware of. At this point, cycle wave 3 has a target calculated at 2887, which is the 11.09 extreme Fibonacci ratio between that and cycle wave 1. And as price continues upwards, if primary wave 4 continues any lower, it cannot move into primary wave 1 price territory at 26.4105. And this low with the end of primary wave 4 on the weekly chart. Is this low on the daily chart, we can see more detail for the upwards movement labeled the beginning of primary wave 5, currently expected to be within intermediate wave 1, currently within that minor wave 1 and minute wave 3. Within minute wave 3, any second wave corrective movement cannot move below its start at 120.9641, meaning if minuet wave 2 just here wants to move any lower, it cannot move below this point. For the short term, minuet wave 3 may be in its very early stages, with minuet wave 2 labeled complete at this last low just here, finding support at the upper edge of the Elliott channel as price previously broke above for the end of minuet wave 1. This also corresponds quite well with the 0.382 logarithmic Fibonacci ratio of minuet wave 1 at 144.7088, while the candlestick with the end of minuet wave 2 ends at 142.7210. It is possible for minuet wave 2 to continue lower towards the 0.618 logarithmic Fibonacci ratio at 135.1357, though with the increasing bullish momentum, current corrective movements may be more brief and shallow. At this point, we do expect minuet wave 3 to continue higher. A short-term confidence point remains at 162.7827, which is this last short-term high here for the end of Minute Wave 1. If price continues above that point, we can have confidence as Minute Wave 3 would then move above the end of Minute Wave 1, meeting that core Elliott Wave rule. And while at this point, the end of Minuet Wave 1 just here may look like it is above the end of Minute Wave 1, the end of Minuet Wave 1 has ended at 161.6622, which is ever so slightly below the end of Minute Wave 1. As price is currently above this Elliott channel, it is expected to remain at the Elliott channel where the end of Minute Wave 2 finds support. Minute Wave 3 moving up and away is now expected to resume that upwards movement. An eventual high above 193.6182 would add further confidence to this wave count as it would break the pattern of lower lows and lower highs shown throughout primary wave 4. And on the technical weekly chart, price has consolidated after this last sharp increase. At this point, consolidating within resistance at 190 and support between 127 and 118. For the short term, price has increased after finding support at 127, finding resistance at 157, and now moves a little bit lower. Volume at this point supports upwards movement with the strongest volume on the bullish candlesticks, particularly in relation to their neighboring bearish candlesticks. On balance, volume continues within a range currently giving no signal. ATR steadily increasing along with price previously. It currently moves sideways with a slight bearish slope along with price, giving an overall bullish outlook for volatility at the weekly time frame. And as ADX declines for Solana at the weekly time frame, we use the model of stochastics in support and resistance, which while we prefer the daily time frame for short-term price fluctuations, the model of stochastics in support and resistance at the weekly time frame suggests an upward swing may continue at this point towards resistance up at 175 or potentially up to 190, where price finds one of those resistance points, while stochastics may enter overbought. On the technical daily chart for Solana, we can see more detail for price's short-term consolidation between support at 127 and 118 and up to resistance at 157. For the very short term, finding resistance at 157, now moving a little bit lower. Volume overall supports upwards movement with the strongest volume on these bullish candlesticks just here, though as price moves sideways for the very short term, we can see a sharp decline in volume, which is standard for a consolidation and not cause for concern at this time frame. ADX now declines at the daily time frame, showing no clear trend. ATR has sharply declined as price consolidates, now moving overall sideways with a bearish slope, seeing an overall bullish outlook for volatility as price consolidates at this point. And as ADX declines for Solana at the daily time frame as well, we continue to use the model of stochastics in support and resistance, which suggests a downward swing may occur at this point towards support at 127 or potentially down to 118, where price finds that support point and stochastics may enter oversold. Please note that while this contradicts the weekly outlook for stochastics in support and resistance, at this point we do favor the daily time frame for short-term price fluctuations as previously mentioned. That's all for me with your weekly update for Solana and the Ethereum technicals. As always, as I have previously mentioned, if you do want the Ethereum Elliott Wave count, you can sign up for that at pureelliottwave.com using the link in the description below. Thank you, and I hope everyone has a good week.